Right, so we are now live. So once again, I want to say formally a welcome and good evening to this, the latest in the series of Black History Month events that we're running here at the University of East London. For those of you that don't know me, and if you're outside of UEL, you certainly won't know me, but you're particularly welcome. I'm Fitzroy Andrew. I'm one of the team at what we call here the Office for Institutional Equity. In most other organisations, it's something like a diversity and inclusion team, but it's a university, so we'll give things slightly peculiar names. So that's what we're called here. And this is, in case you're in any doubt, this is the event that is about Black leaders, and the subtitle is Our Time Is Now. So once again, you're all very welcome to this event. We've got a great panel here this evening, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves very shortly, but I just want to set up tonight's event, just a little bit of context, because yes, this is Black History Month. Yes, we're all aware that this has been a highly eventful year, particularly when we're talking about matters of race and specifically around Black lives. So we're all aware of the Black Lives Matter protests and the activity that generated in a whole number of realms. For me, some of the most interesting activity happened in the corporate space. So you had companies positioning themselves around Black Lives Matter and what it means in terms of Black lives in ways that certainly I hadn't quite seen before. And there was other activity outside of the corporate space, but intending to have an impact on the corporate space. One such activity was the formation of a movement, I think it's probably accurate to call it that, called Black Leaders. And so when we were putting the events together for this month, I thought, because it's something that I personally have been involved in, I thought it would be great if we could maybe have some space to talk a little bit about Black leaders, specifically as a movement. And we're honoured to have, we've got one of the founders here with us this evening, but I guess more broadly about what it says about the Black inclusion and Black involvement, specifically in the corporate sector. So as I say, we've got a great panel here who will all be talking to that in their own respective ways over the next hour and a half or so. So the way it'll work is that the first 45 minutes or so, I'll be managing a conversation with our guests. And then in the second half of the show, we'll throw it open to questions and answers. And I'm sure there'll be many of you out there that will have questions and answers, and hold on to those. You might want to put some of those questions in the chat, and I will keep an eye on that during the course of the event, and maybe pick up on things that people are putting into the chat as we go through the event. But then again, once we get formally into Q&A, you're welcome to come on camera if you so choose, but you might also want to put your comments in the chat. And again, once again, if I can ask just for the first half, unless you're a presenter, can I ask that you keep your cameras and your microphones off? And then if you want to come on camera to ask a question or to make a comment, then by all means do so at that stage. But that's just, I think that as much as anything, it just helps the viewing experience for you as well. Because if your screen is like mine, you can see lots of images on the screen. And actually, one of the ways you can get around that, if you're familiar with Teams, is that you can pin particular people to the screen, so their image will appear larger and everything else will be relegated to a smaller icon. And once I've asked our panelists to introduce themselves, that will probably make a little bit more sense. But that's it from me by way of introduction. What I will do now is to ask our panel just to introduce themselves very quickly, literally just for a minute or two, because you'll be hearing a lot more from them during the course of the evening. So if I go in alphabetical order by surname, and that means Fiona, I'm going to come to you first of all.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining. So my Daniel. I am the CEO and founder of FD2I, which is a inclusion consultancy that helps companies to move from diversity to inclusion with a holistic approach in taking action in all different aspects of business. As Fitz has already mentioned, I'm also the founder of Black Leaders, which we'll be talking about obviously, and I shall share more. And I think that's enough. That's all I'll say, because you'll obviously hear my voice in
Sure.
in different ways and answers, but that's me.
Yeah, but just one other thing, Fiona, before you set up your companies and black leaders, what were you doing? That would be
So before that, yes,
yes.
because that will be useful to know. I
Yes.
didn't just land in those spaces. So prior to that, I have been in the financial services industry for over 25 years, and a big chunk of that I worked at HSBC for over 20 years, and I'll show you my age now, and did a number of roles, of which a big part of my, well, half and half really, has been customer facing, but also very much people focused. So my biggest passion I got to do, which was driving diversity inclusion, both at a global level and also at a national level. So I was the global lead for D&I. I was the global head of our employee networks and a senior global D&I relationship manager, looking after all of our business functions, which are very large in number. Then head of UK D&I as well. So a lot of experience in different ways and a lot of D&I experience as well.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Fiona. Next, we're coming to Nathan. Nathan Dyke. Welcome, Nathan.
I think I've got a window where he's in the other room.
Okay. Okay.
Just for
Nathan
everyone
has a very special guest with him, so yeah, he may make his presence felt during the evening.
Indeed, I've got my 3-year-old that's running in and out of the room, so I try and keep this brief. But firstly, yeah, thanks for having me, Fitzroy. So I'm Nathan Dyke. I'm a head of retailer insight at Autotrader. And for those who haven't heard of Autotrader, it's the UK's largest automotive marketplace in the UK, with more used cars and new cars than any other platform. So if you're buying a new or used car, you probably go to that site. Alongside sort of my day job of being head of retailer insight, I also lead the BAME network at Autotrader as well. And for us, we've redefined BAME to be building a multicultural environment, because it's all around creating inclusion. As well as that, I also sit on Autotrader's board engagement guild, which is I guess our mechanism for providing feedback and sentiment back to the board. So we meet on a quarterly basis with the board as well. And my favourite foods are now anything.
Okay, it would be great to hear a little bit more about retailer insight at some stage during the conversation as well, because that sounds interesting. But I wonder, yeah, it might just be good to unravel that a little bit more. Not so much now, because I want to go to the other, but certainly during the conversation it would be good, because it'll be interesting to see how diversity and inclusion impacts on that particular dimension of what is your, I suppose, what is your day job as well. So, sure. Okay, Ollie, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Fitzroy. So my name is Ollie O'Donoghue. My day job, I work for HSBC. I'm the regional director for the branch network, looking after the southeast of England and also across the southwest. Alongside my very busy day job, as if I haven't got enough to do, I also co-chair BAME Embrace Network, and I also sit on the UK EXCO steering committee for ethnicity. So that's a little bit about myself.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Ollie. And last but certainly not least, Jason, welcome.
Thank you very much, Fitz, and hello to everybody. So I'm Jason Sinclair. Currently, I'm a partner at a management consultancy firm called Queensbury, and I head up the division that looks after people strategy, including ED&I. Added to that, I'm also a director in another organisation called Profile Resourcing, which is an inclusive practice recruiter. I look after the relationships with our clients in that particular business. I sit on a few boards, so I've got a bit of experience of doing some trustee work and non-executive work as well. My background is all around people, very similar actually to fees. So people, HR, talent, learning and organizational development, that's sort of my bag. And then added to that, employability. So I do quite a lot of work in supporting youngsters with their sort of aspirations and giving them direction on how to get into certain sectors.
Okay, thanks, Jason. So yeah, so I want to say a big thanks to all four of you for making the time to be available this evening. It's great that we've got the range of experiences here, because we're talking about, certainly in terms of HSBC and Autotrader, we're talking about, nationally known businesses. So, you know, it's great to hear that you're both very much in the business of diversity and inclusion, and looking forward to more about what you've been seeing in your respective businesses over the last few months in the wake of Black Lives Matter. But I want to, I guess, start off by talking about Black leaders and the movement. And so coming to you firstly, Fiona, I mean, I've been involved, as you well know, in Black leaders. And so I know a little bit of the creation story, as it were, but I'd be really interested to hear of it from your point of view, and literally, where did the conversation start and who were the conversations with?
Okay, good question. So, how did it all start? I think, you know, there isn't anybody that on the universe that wasn't touched, affected, impacted by the whole tragedy of George Floyd. And I think for me, I remember just, you know, watching that, then seeing the outputs afterwards, particularly from a UK perspective of, but we're all right here. We don't have any issues here. So, you know, why should this be a big deal? And then at the same time, there was a number of articles that were coming out with all, you know, different viewpoints on. And it just, for me, I just sat there and just said, do you know something? There's more that we need to do clearly to now start to change that narrative. So I had an idea, which was to do a number of things. So one was to bring Black professionals together to connect our Black leader population. And that Black leader population is actually made up of individuals from your internship, traineeship, so literally pipeline all the way through from joining an organisation to, you know, reaching the higher echelons in companies. Then it was looking at some of the discrepancies and disproportionality that we see in our communities, in education and in other parts of society. So for me, it was about bringing those Black leaders together to actually start to create and shape solutions that will change the narrative, that will change the statistics that we keep reading about, that's just demonstrating that we're just not where we need to be in this space. And to have Black leaders owning their own narrative, shaping their own outcomes for Black people, led by Black people. So I had a conversation with Paul Cisse, who is the CEO of Inclusive Companies and National Diversity Awards, to say, look, this is what I'm thinking. I want to bring this population together, but I'm less about me being the founder of it. I'm more about having others shape it, and really thankful for all the people that are leading our work streams on this area, individuals like yourself and, you know, people that are participating here on this call and all these other amazing people, because without them, we really wouldn't be where we have got to. So for me, it was building on from that conversation and then engaging more with various different people to actually bring that together and to see its growth in a short space of time has been pretty phenomenal. I think the other piece as well for me is around, like I said, one is changing the narrative, but the other piece for me is about the importance, though, of, as well as connecting our Black leaders to Black leaders, but it's also about connecting our Black leaders to allies, to our supporters, because this is a journey that we cannot just take on our own. And that will also help to change the narrative and really start to take action across moving that dial, I think, for me. So that's how it all came about. And, you know, and that narrative changing to move it from a negative narrative to a positive narrative that this current generation and the next generation can be proud of, in an environment that's accepting of them, that they don't have to go through some of the challenges that I've gone through and others have gone through, so that when their time comes, they shouldn't have to be looking back and going, why are we still in this space? I want this to be 5 years, 15, 20 years down the line, just a norm, less of the challenges that we are seeing, so that, you know, individuals can thrive in an environment that includes them.
Okay. So what I hadn't appreciated is that it really did start with you, and that it was you that approached Paul
Yes,
rather than Paul or Aggie being, because Paul is, you know, as you well know, is the man who kind of puts things together. If people are familiar with the National Diversity Awards, and that's Paul Cisse, that's very much his thing. So okay, that's great to hear. So bring us up to date. Where are things at right now with Black leaders?
All right then. So I'm trying to keep it short and succinct.
Yeah, I know, I hear that.
Where we are today is that, you know, we had a fantastic launch event last week to really help to put Black leaders on the map and in people's consciousness. And where we are today is that from next year, we will have what we're calling Black Inclusion Week. That will be very much a celebration of all things Black across the UK, whether that's in, you know, whatever industry, whatever sector. It's really about showing, and like I said before, that narrative, that positivity about all the great stuff that Black people do, have contributed to, rather than looking backwards at history. This is about looking forward. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is, you know, very much from a corporate perspective, is making sure that some of the things that we often hear about around, you know, how do we move the dial in how we do talent, how we do succession planning, how do we ensure that we have at a very senior level, at board level, that representation, and on, you know, and onwards and onwards. So one part of that is something that's we also highlighted last week, which is called the Black Inclusion Index. And what that will do will help us to really see what is happening across corporate UK in various different areas. So whether that's around the employee life cycle, whether that's around customers, whether that's around how individuals progress, all that kind of good stuff. We really want to get a really good, clear picture of what action is actually taken, so that when we see the black squares on social media, that's all great. But what is really happening? What is the action that's actually taking place that demonstrates this movement? We're seeing so much good stuff that companies are articulating around, you know, we want to have, you know, more Black people by this percentage to that percentage. We want to see this, we're having interns here. That's all brilliant. But to me, it's the true measure of success is around the actions being taken, but also around the structural systemic challenges that are in organisations. What's being really done to remove those barriers? How is that being done? Then the last but not least bit I'll mention is across the oh gosh, it's so massive, the pillars. We have the huge pillar known as inclusive workplaces, which you know about, Fitz, because you're on there. So we've got some amazing people across all of these things. And then we have a focus on education, which is really around how do we support our pupils in schools, in universities, and our teachers in particular, in terms of understanding the Black lived experience, both historically and presently, and also then the work that happens in our communities. How can we ensure that our Black communities are also not forgotten? There's some great people out there doing some really great stuff, but how do we make sure that they've got the tools to do what they need to do? So we're also launching our first thing, which is a leadership program that's for our communities, for individuals to really equip themselves with those skills needed in the workplace to be better in their own communities. So I'll stop there, but that's where we're at now in terms of some really great stuff in driving that whole Black inclusion piece. And there's more to come, because other things that, as we know, Fitz and the others that are still in motion to come. It's a big task, but we are more than capable of delivering.
Yeah, okay. And I mean, what you're saying, Fiona, is already generating some questions, which I'm going to hold on to for a while. We'll definitely come back to that in the second half. But there is one that Donna has asked, which I think is probably worth, and it's about who is a Black leader.
So like
and I
guess,
said, how have you identified, or how have Black leaders identified themselves in relation to the movement as it exists so far?
So I think what's happened, and again, this will be a much better answer from Ollie, Nathan, and Jason as well, because, you know, the way I have positioned that at the outset was exactly around the things that I've talked about. So around bringing individuals together to connect with each other, etc., etc. So I think what it has done is people have connected with it because it obviously meant something. There's something that there's an affinity there to say, I want to be part of this because I get this. This is what I am wanting. Who's a Black leader? Anyone's a Black leader. Anyone that is about driving change, anyone that's also about not only driving change, but also is lost, I suppose, in the ether of other stuff. So when we're talking about race much more broadly, we know there is challenges right across the BAME. What often gets lost is, well, all of them get lost. So we don't really have a clear picture of the Black aspects and so on and so forth. So for me, Black leaders, the name is very much around the leaders present, the leaders past, and the leaders future. That's who Black leaders is and who it's for.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I would add to that from my own observation is that as well as, you know, the other panelists that we have here are very much representative of the people that have gotten involved so far. So there are a number of people that are working for themselves in a whole range of fields, in consultancy, in HR, in marketing, in financial management, in financial services. You've got corporate executives. So people like Nathan, who are, you know, have got responsible senior roles within mainstream companies and not so well-known companies as well. So they are leaders defined by the position that they hold in their companies, but they are also leaders by what I will call inclination, regardless of the position that they hold. If they know that they've got things to say, they know they've got energy to contribute, then that by definition is a leader. And I suppose it brings to mind that whole idea of servant leadership that is around at the moment as well, which I'm no doubt everyone will have heard of. But okay, Fiona, that's been great just to kind of set things up. Let me come to our other guests here, and just interested to hear a little bit about what your involvement, if any, has been in Black leaders so far. Don't mind who goes first, so you might just need to start speaking and then find it out amongst yourselves, as it were. So.
I don't mind going first. So I've been involved in the Inclusive Workplaces work stream, so really helping to shape that Black Inclusion Index that Fiona touched on. And I guess my inspiration for wanting to get involved is probably twofold. The first part is probably getting to work closely with Fiona and Paul was the main inspiration, because been fortunate to work with both Paul and Fiona on a few events in the past, and I think, you know, you will hear like Fiona's journey and stories like nothing short of inspirational. So I think getting to work closer with them on this journey was a huge driver for me. And then I think the second part is probably to do with like a personal mantra of mine of being a part of the solution or being a part of the change that I want to see. So getting involved in the BAME network at Autotrader, we'd kind of been on that, I guess, internal mission for a couple of years now. And I'd always kind of had in my mind that then afterwards, I wanted to kind of expand the learning, the experience, kind of what I'd learned from that journey, and expand that and have that ripple effect out into the sort of more broader society. So I think when Fiona and Paul presented the Black Leaders Organisation, it just kind of really helped me see, right, what does that journey look like, because, and bring into life, I guess, the learnings from what I'd sort of taken from my time at AT.
Yeah, and it's probably worth saying as well that you know, Black Leaders as a movement has attracted a number of corporate sponsors, and Autotrader was, if not the first, certainly one of the first. So that, I think, says an awful lot about the company as well in terms of its commitment. And again, the chief exec, the top man at the company, was one of the speakers at last Thursday's launch event as well. So again, that says something, it seems to me, about their commitment to it. So great, thanks. I'm interested. You've probably seen the comment in the chat about how that kind of reframing of the whole BAME acronym as well. You will know that that's become a bit of a bone of contention, shall we say, because it tends to subsume differences rather than accentuate differences. So that's, yeah, but my advice would be hold on to it, because people here will take anything from you. You know, you leave it around for 5 minutes, it will disappear. So carry that with you when you're gone to. That would be my advice.
Sure.
Okay, Ollie, Jason, anything you wanted to?
Yeah, I'll go next. And I think for me, when I think of the reason why I joined Black Leaders. For me, it was all about being inspired, because if you look across the pond with America, there are a lot more out there in talking about Black excellence. And if you look at Black Leaders, for me, that's what it represents, Black excellence. There's just so many amazing people with so many range of background that if you're looking to be inspired to make a change that is well needed, you know, in any sector that you want to, you will not be short of getting inspiration on what great really, really looks like. Then the other part for me is around, as we dial up the conversation around race and ethnicity, you know, a lot of our young people, I work in the corporate world, and I know how difficult it is for many people to break into that field, especially if they're Black, you know, but being able to be part of Black Leaders and also sit in a corporate world. I'm a recruiter. I run a branch network across Southeast England and Southwest. I've got 50% of the Black branch network in the UK for HSBC. So I just want to so much tell the story that when it comes to C-suite representation, there's many, many people like myself. I don't have to be the only one, you know, in that space. And I really buy into what Black Leaders is all about and Black excellence. You know, I'm looking as we get into 2021 to definitely affirm myself in a working group, you know, because I believe that I can bring a lot into the working groups to inspire as many people as possible. So whenever you think of Black Leaders, I want everyone to think of Black excellence, you know, and I want the Black leader population to grow to thousands, because there's so many people out there that represent Black excellence.
Okay. Loud and clear.
Love
Jason.
it.
Yeah, for me, it was a standout organisation. It was something very new, and I think for much of my career, I've worked in organisations where I was kind of the only representative of the Black community within both the sector, but also at the level that I was working at. So certainly once I got into senior management and directorship, there was nobody else. So I think that this, having a forum where all of us can get together and talk, and also being massive on developing talent, developing the future generations to want to aspire to hit that C-suite level, or you know, or whatever it might be for themselves. That's a massive thing for me. Anybody that knows me, you know, I've spent over 4 years in higher education as well as an executive director looking after employability, and I was really, really keen on developing that the excellence within our young Black community that were coming through the undergraduate, those that were returning to do master's programs, those that were coming back to do PhDs. There was a huge amount of them that want to aspire to do great things, but having a network like this where they can talk openly with people who are maybe already there, but also have an introduction to leaders, influencers and allies across all sectors. That's a really powerful tool set for us to utilize to be able to help those next generations coming through. And I would love to see that, you know, Black Leaders has a huge impact on what happens in our education system, what happens in the relationship between education and corporates and other businesses and SMEs that are growing, sectors like tech, digital space, so that we are able to really introduce those youngsters to those sectors and get them fast-tracked into those organizations, and then fast-tracking their ascension through those organizations, because that's a big piece of the work that I look after, is helping organizations to not just do the work on the D by recruiting some diverse talent, but actually work on the I first.
Exactly.
To get so that all of the mechanisms are in place to make sure that when you do get the D, they can equally ascend through the organization at the same pace as everybody else.
Yeah. What's something that's really powerful in what you've all said. I mean, I first got involved in something like Black Leaders, 30 odd years ago. I was working in the NHS then. I was an HR director, and there was a consultancy which I actually went on to work for a few years later on, but they coordinated a network of senior Black managers in the public sector. And they went on to organize a number of conferences and so on. But one of the things that was distinctive about Black Leaders was this emphasis on what we will call today pipeline. So it's not enough just to get there for yourself, although that's good in and of itself. It is also about ensuring that you don't pull the ladder up behind you.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
so that nobody else can follow. And that is something that is always distinctive. I mean, yes, you can see parallels in other ways if you're looking at women in leadership, because that's a parallel strand of activity in arguably going on much longer than work on black leaders and black managers. But that's one of the things that makes working in this kind of area really distinctive compared to working a lot of leadership, because you will all have worked with leaders who are only really concerned about themselves. Once they get there, then that's all that matters really and truly. Whereas with black leaders, what you find over and over again is this concern not just for themselves, but for those who can follow as well.
Yeah.
So, they might have to
absolutely.
forge a path, but they want to ensure that there's a trail that other people can follow, so they can follow that same path and maybe go further than they went as well. And yeah, that's one of the really powerful things, I think.
Yeah, and for me, Fitz, I mean, that is so, so important. People that know me well, which there's a few on here, will know that, I'm not into labels. I'm not, for me, yes, I founded it, but that is what's more important to me.
Yeah.
It's the impact that it has. It's it's not about me. It's not the Fiona show. It's about all these amazing black leaders coming from all these different backgrounds who have this desire to make a difference, not for themselves, but for the next generation or for another person who's coming through the ranks. So you're absolutely right. That's what it's about for me. It's about a much bigger thing. It's less about being, the founder. My position now, I see myself as any of our other amazing black leaders now as a key contributor and shaper in driving some of these great solutions. So that's where I'm at in my own mind with this now. It's like, yeah, we've got it now. Let's now spend less time about, the founding partners, I suppose. And not that it is about that, but you know what I mean? It's more for me about the actual purpose now.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Let me move the conversation on, because in a way, Black Leaders was at least partially, although you could have done it at any time. But I guess what happened this year really gave things a bit of an impetus and a push. And I'm really interested in how the corporate sector has responded to the kind of the Black Lives Matter type of agenda. And I'm interested, I guess, in Ollie and Nathan as people that are working inside corporates at the moment. And I guess my question would be, because your companies have been doing work in this area for some time before this summer. So I guess my question would be, did this summer change anything about the work that you were doing in relation to, I suppose, black leaders, or about the issue of race, or about the issue of black representation within, I suppose, your corporate spaces?
Yeah, sure, Fitz. I'll go, and want to highlight that going on the back of the summer events, I will say for many corporate entities, including the global bank that I also work for, that Black Lives Matter movement was the biggest awakening, in terms of what's going on out there, because I think it's very fair to say many organizations have been muted on the matter of dealing with ethnicity, because you tend to have the BAME and ED&I agenda for many banks, for example, but you hear a lot around gender, which I support very much so, around LGBT, again, which I support, fairness. But I will say the list that you hear about for many senior executives is around ethnicity. It's on its own right. And for many of us that have been around leading networks to drive this agenda, we always had the frustration of why do you think it's actually difficult to talk about race? For me, when you say that you're excluding many of your employees, like myself, in actually bringing our true self to work, if you're going to benefit from who we are overall. So it absolutely changed the narrative. I saw a lot of what I would say panic statements out there, because everybody then wanted to associate with Black Lives Matter. I also saw many organizations that were very thoughtful, because there was also maybe a lot more reserve in coming out, because they knew that as soon as they come public, there'll be an element of your own employees judging you, whether you've taken any tangible action around this. And in my own organization, I know, again, being very heavily involved in talking to some of the most senior executives in the bank, I've seen that unfold I've also seen our Black colleagues going through the phase of, for the first time, really speaking up and sharing their lived experience.
Okay.
And many people felt uncomfortable, but more traumatizing for the Black colleagues. So I think it has changed, if
Right.
anything, amplifying the voice on race. But also now we're seeing a lot more steering committees being set up and CEOs putting commitments out there to actually focus on the Black element of BAME, because
Okay.
like Fiona said, there's so many different challenges that sit within this strand. So interesting to see. A lot have committed around career progression. I'm passionate about that because 20 years ago when I joined banking, I've just shown my age, again, I looked up and
I'll
there
keep it
wasn't
quiet.
really
Listen, I'm older than
many.
all of you. Let me just make
Absolutely,
sure
yeah.
of that. Trust me. I
Yeah.
may not look it, but I am. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
I'm only
Yeah,
20.
there wasn't definitely many role models that you will see that look like you. It was a frustration for me in hearing about lack of talent, and I'm like, I detest that completely, because there is plenty of talent, around it. It's around you inviting that talent to want to actually come and work for you. And for the students on the line that are actually looking to graduate, I want to just let you know, if anything, that just remember the organization needs you more than you actually think that you need them, because you're bringing so much freshness into it. So go out there and get it, and be part of the C-suite that is actually possible to get to. Don't wait like some of us waited for the longest time and keep pushing and prodding. Now is your time. You must come out of education.
Correct.
And go out there believing that we need you more than you actually need the organization, if that makes sense. So I
Yes.
think I'll stop because I'm sure Nathan wants to come in.
Yeah. No, but I just want to reinforce that point you made about talent, because it really does count. Do you recognize that talent looks like us? I think the question is that fundamental for so many companies. So it's really great that you articulated that. But yeah, Nathan, interested to hear what things have looked like, I suppose, from your own perspective, but also within Auto Trader as well, insofar as you can share some of that.
Yeah, sure. So echo a lot of what Ollie had to say as well, in terms of the conversation being more overt, more direct. I think more pointed on the head of around Black, as opposed to more broader ethnicity. So I think, as you said, we've been on the journey for a couple of years now. So actually, it wasn't so much we're doing anything different. I think there was more an acceleration of the things that we already were doing. We'd kind of landed the foundation of, having the conversation. We were having, quarterly events where more and more people were coming along to try and understand more around the challenges of being a ethnic minority in the workplace. But I think what the events of 2020 did, certainly around the May June time, it really helped sort of shine a big light on across the whole company, across the whole organization, and across, I guess, broader society as well. So we, the events were addressed by our CEO and our COO via an all-employee sort of webinar, via an email. We held an internal AT talks where a couple of my colleagues in the network gave an hour-long session, and I believe to this day it was one of the most engaged and most watched internal AT talks that we put on. And I guess it was a really heartfelt sort of overview about the events, so talking about the backdrop of COVID and the impact, the disproportionate effect it was having on the BAME community, and then going on to talk about not just George Floyd, but all of the events that preceded the George Floyd event, and sort of talking about why it was such a big thing, why it was a big thing in the UK as well, because again, a lot of the commentary was around this is an America problem. So it really helped to sort of bring that back and make it real for our colleagues as well, because again, for a lot of people, it was the start of their journey of understanding. For many people, this was the first time that they had been greeted with this. Actually, what are these things that we're talking about? And I think the great thing of what we had in place was, because we started that journey already, we kind of had the mechanisms to be able to support that conversation. So we had regular meetings, we had regular meetups. So it just meant that more and more people were able to then come, because they were filled with this, I need to understand more about this. So I had loads of colleagues sort of reaching out, trying to understand more about this, trying to find out where they could find educational resources. So we had a dedicated page built on our learning hub where people can find out more about race. We had that internally to start with, and then we've also put it on our careers page as well externally. So if you're interested in working at Auto Trader, you can immediately see that that's the thing that's important to us, and therefore, you know, here's some resources where you can get educated on it. And I think, yeah, put simply, we're able. Racism for many people is a very difficult thing to talk about, and I think, given that the significance of the events, I think it just really allowed for people to engage and start to talk through this in a much more empathetic way. Conscious of that, I can talk about this forever, so I'm probably gonna anymore.
No, I hear that. No, but it's really great to hear that a company, and people think about companies as focused on money, and that's right, they are, because that's how companies work. But a company has opened up the space to allow its people to talk in that way, and for people to really start to connect with some of these issues that we live with our whole lives. So this is familiar territory for us, but you know, it's great to hear. Jason and Fiona, as people, I guess, that are you're looking at companies like Auto Trader and HSBC as clients, and I guess, Jason, for you particularly, because part of your work is in search, as I understand it. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Yes. Are you seeing anything different from some of your clients about, you know, you're given an assignment to search for an executive? Are you hearing anything different from your clients about ensuring that the candidates that you present reflect the diversity, and particularly maybe reflect, you know, black candidates, given some of the kind of the Black Lives Matter conversations? I just wonder whether you're seeing any of that.
A lot more so. What's happened actually for us as a business is, because we're already an inclusive practice recruiter, more people are coming to us and asking what we can do specifically to help them with that challenge of you know, shopping.
So it's good for business,
in
literally.
the right places. It's very good for business. It has been good for business, but there are people that have definitely specifically said we want. One recent example was a business that's a luxury soft furnishing brand, and that particular industry is particularly homogenous. This particular chief executive said to me directly that he wants to make a change, and he wants to be the brand that does have black people in certain key roles. So then every role that he's given, he's asked for us to give a shortlist that is black. That's what he wants, just to change that the narrative within his own sector. But I think it is broadly much being, it's definitely more of a conversation we're having with people that are internal talent acquisition leads or HR directors or chief people officers, etc. They are talking much more openly about how can they purposefully make more strides to attract black applicants at all levels. So I'm talking through early careers, experience hire, and then the executive hire as well. So across all three strands, there are a lot more conversations happening. And also in the management consultancy side of the business that I work in with Queensbury, it's exactly the same thing. More organizations are wanting to talk about the mechanics of how to be best practice. Also, what type of communication should they be having? And where should they be shopping? So they want to know more about the communities, etc., that they can go into to handpick the talent that they want. So we're having lots of encouraging conversations, and the best thing for me is that it's more sustainable. It's not so much knee-jerk conversations. It's actually what can we do structurally? What can we change? What do we need to change to make the whole organization inclusive, and then also have that mechanism to bring in the right levels of talent, but from our demographic. So that's been a positive thing.
That's really good to hear. And Fiona, just coming to you finally, because I'm keen to get into some of the questions that have been posted in the chat. But I guess from the work that you're doing with companies, what are you seeing that's different with your clients as a result of what happened this summer?
Yeah, can everyone just make sure that I'm mute, because I'm just struggling to hear you there.
There's only a little bit of air.
Who's that? Sorry, has somebody got their microphone on? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Right. So sorry, what was the was it the question? Was it
Right.
the
So the question
what
was,
am I
I guess,
seeing?
similar. Are you seeing
Yeah.
anything different from your clients as a consequence of
I think it echoes what everybody has said so far. You know, what I am seeing is definitely a change in terms of how diversity inclusion is actually being approached now, because before it was very much you know, either strand focused where people were comfortable with certain strands. Now what I'm seeing is, do you know what, we have been exclusive to this population. We look here, we look, you know, we can see much more rich data that is informing, that's both qualitative and quantitative data that's informing better decisions. What we're also seeing, like I said, is this shift in the approach to the agenda. What I'm seeing though, more than anything else, is that, which I think is really positive, is people that are once, I suppose, the cynics of this agenda have realised that there is power in voice of change. There is power in everybody connecting on a something that has been a massive trigger, and actually they can see the ripple effect that that has had. Even if they sat there before and thought this has nothing to do with my business, they have realized that it has something to do with their business, no matter what their business is, particularly if you have customers, if you have clients, if you have, you know, a big diverse employee base. They're seeing that, you know what, we can no longer ignore this sea of change and power and influence that's coming from all of these different stakeholders now. So, and the last thing I think that is a beauty to see is, and I'm still seeing this shift onwards, there's something that I always say that, which is, you know, what I've seen in the past is very often is that people, decision makers, whether that's people line managers, whether that's at the board level, often make decisions about people without the people. What I'm seeing now is decisions being made about people with the people. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I think is fundamental. And what I mean by that is that what we are seeing is conversations. We are seeing conversations that now include Black people. Don't have a conversation without me. Don't make decisions without me not being there. It's they are involved in how do we improve, how do we make things better, how do we, and I'm not saying that these individuals are the, you know, they're not the librarians of please tell me about all your Black experience. No, what I'm talking about is let me help you to make better decisions that include me. Let me help you to think about some of those things that you're looking at, but because you haven't got that perspective around the table, I will provide that perspective. So would that person, that person. This is where the power of the networks have been so amazing and powerful. This is where we're seeing more in a sea of change with, you know, supporting businesses, the corporate world, in fact, your non-corporate world, who are leaning more into Black businesses, Black, you know, to me, Black-led businesses at that, because they want to now fully appreciate and understand what is it that we've got missing, because we haven't got that expertise here. And some of them do, but it's just been a while for them to really wake up and smell the coffee. And I think that's what it's done. It's enabled this beautiful can of worms to be open, that is in turn opened other people's mind to a situation that, don't, you know, let's not kid around the bush here. We're all talking, I've been involved in this for years, pre-George Floyd, you know, to me, and so lots of other people who have been pushing the dial on this agenda. But now, for the first time, which is why the time is now, everybody is on this page, because we've recognised that we can't go on like this. It is not right. it is not fair that we have year in, year out, a situation where Black individuals are excluded across society in different ways. And I think because we're in that space of seeing something at the same time, because we're all in a situation with COVID, etc., it's actually, like I said, probably served in, you know, in a sad way, but let's take the positives out of it. So in a positive way, probably served a better lesson around unconscious bias than actually doing something on unconscious bias.
I hear that. I hear that. Okay, great stuff. I'm going to go to some of the questions that have been put into the chat. So let me just scroll up the page a little bit, because there was some really good stuff put in here. So yeah, got the point about building a multicultural environment. Yeah, we'll pass over that. Questions here from Monica Imbert, and it's addressed specifically to you, Fiona. You've been part of this movement for a number of years. What tangible change have you seen during your journey? And from her background, her organisation is relaunching its BAME network, but it feels like a tick box exercise. And then there's another question, which is about what advice outside of executive membership, not convinced by it, do you have to create leverage to make real and sustained systemic change? And there might be something for all of you, because you're all
I think we all can contribute
in different ways, I guess. But let me start with you, Fiona.
Yeah, I think we can all contribute to that question. So the first part is just trying to remind myself what it says about what tangible change have I seen in this journey.
Have you seen across your journey?
I think
40 years in HSBC.
Yeah, and I'd say working with clients, but I think the tangible change for me has been the creation, and Ollie can keep me true here. So it's the creation of the dashboards that help us to have a better look at what's happening across our employee life cycle. So who's leaving, who's staying, who's being promoted, who isn't, what is happening. Then I think the other piece for me, a big tangible change, is the way, and this isn't just HSBC, this is what I'm seeing a lot in other organisations, but seeing the things like the imagery, the communications, where before, you know, we were lucky to actually see, you know, we see lots of change, don't we, when we talk about the fantastic movement of pride and LGBT with the flag, you know, with the rainbow colours. What's been a tangible change for me that's happened in the last few years, and it's taken a while. We've had probably one or two people, organisations doing that, where they've actually put things on their on the receipts when you go shopping around Black History Month. That never happened before. And I'm talking before this. I'm talking 2 years before. Your Sainsbury's did this, well leading the way about 3 years ago. I think the tangible change is also in the fact that we're making the shift from talking about it to actually now generating action about it. You know, I could go on, but, you know, so I think for me, it's the tangible change of having it not only just talked about, but actually part of the board conversation, not BORED, but the BOARD conversation at board level in organisations. So these are some of the tangible changes that I have seen. I've also seen, and this doesn't happen consistently in every organisation, because some organisations, you know, vary in size and on different parts of the journey. But some of the tangible changes that I've also seen is where they happen in different parts of the business. So things in terms of how we communicate, how we do our marketing, what we're saying in different ways. We have great leaders who are taking ownership of this agenda and making change in their recruitment processes. You know, so all of these things for me is about raising those pockets of excellence so we can have that consistency across the whole organisation. So there's been some really great tangible impact. What we need to see more of is more of the breakdown of those barriers, more of the structural systemic changes that are required to really help accelerate progress. And I'll let somebody else answer the second question and can come back to me.
Yeah. So about, you know, what are the levers that you can access? And I guess I'm interested, Nathan, you're involved in the network, which I think, and there's some leverage there. Ollie, you're a senior manager, and so you have a level of, I would imagine, authority just by virtue of the position that you're in to either influence or make change as well. Just what's your take on what some of those levers might be?
Yeah, so I guess I'll give two answers to that question, because I guess it kind of depends on where you are with your organisation. I guess we were in a fortunate position that our senior leadership team were very much bought into the journey, like long before I'd kind of had started having conversations with them. So it was very much pushing on an open door. I think where myself and the rest of the network and the working group have been able to add value is in helping, because I guess in that room was just a blank room, empty room. So we've just been able to help fill that and say, all right, this is where we think we can make some real progress. And because, you know, it's quite difficult to kind of advise on how you can help us if you've not walked a step in any of our shoes, sort of thing. So I think we've been able to help in that from that perspective. I guess if you're in an organization where you're not seeing that there's that, I guess, proactivity, that it doesn't seem like they're completely on the bus, I think networks can be hugely powerful tools. I think by getting that collective voice, that collective sentiment, and packaging that up in a way where, you know, you can present that to your senior leadership team, your exec team, to say, look, this is how a proportion of your workforce feels within to work at insert company name. And if that's not the prettiest of pictures, it doesn't make for pretty listening or reading to hear that passed on to an exec team and they've kind of not done anything about it. So I think the key in that is to try and package that in a way where it's useful. It's not just kind of, it's in a way where you can actually do something with it. I think there's some people are, I guess, enthused by data. Some people will be more sort of connected to stories. And I think through the combination of both of them, you should hopefully be able to kind of get through or tap into people. We've had sort of great success through using both. Most, as Fiona said, mentioned earlier, most organisations now are in a place where they have got better data. There's better visibility about their workforce makeup. So I'll be drawing on all of those to kind of really, I guess, get them to sort of take this thing seriously. So I can speak for everyone this, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think just to add on to what Nathan have already said, you know, I genuinely think that people are our biggest assets, and that's the organizations are starting to realize that outside of network as well, you know, you will have people that are actually silent advocates. Is seeking those people out because they tend to be quite senior, and then getting them to leverage their voice in influencing change. Especially networks can do a lot in terms of packaging insight and voice, but what network don't have the power to do is change policy.
Yeah.
But this is where the advocates come in, and then working also with your D&I and HR team to really look into recruitment policies. You know, then I'm coming on to customers, because I think, again, every organization, you've touched on this, Fitzroy, is there also to make profit. You need to look at the economic benefit, you know, of that. Now we're getting to see so much more insight, you know, around the economic benefits from Black businesses, investing in Black businesses and helping them grow, you know, overall. So I think that's an area that's actually still underused a lot by major organizations. Who would have thought in 2020, you'll be talking about, we've always talked about analytics, but actually having people that do data mining. So how do you leverage those data mine specialists to really talk into bringing economic benefit insights into that organization? So I would say those are the big ones. But advocates, I think advocates are still not understood into the power of what they can do. I've seen it again in our own organization when we've tapped into senior leadership and helping them, you know, be more comfortable around talking about race, you know, because for some reason, the more senior you are, the less you want to appear vulnerable, you know, but you have to allow them that space to be vulnerable. Then you can actually encourage, you know, and give that confidence to really go in there and actually tackle the topic, because people look up, and if they see people that are quite senior, being vulnerable and actually exploring topics that they will not normally do, that's when you start to create that movement, and change. But I think it's about time we talk about the Black Pound and the economic benefit that it brings to organization, more so than anything.
Yeah, I really support that. I think that political slogan, "It's the economy, stupid." I really think that has a relevance to that. I think the experience, the stories is great at making an individual connection, but ultimately about driving systemic and real change, you have to bring the economic argument in, it seems to me. Absolutely. Jason, anything you wanted to add, I guess, particularly from if you're working with a client on these kinds of issues, what might your take be on how you help them recognize and then pull those levers to bring about the kind of change that they want to see?
I think so. A lot of it is about empowering people to actually speak and use their voice.
Okay.
And sometimes, and I think one of the things that popped up in the chat was somebody talking about from a view of somebody that's not an executive and not a senior leader. But actually, if you're willing to engage with your senior leadership team and say, this is an area of concern to our business, and this is why, every senior leader is all about their business's profitability and obviously making sure that everything works as well as it possibly can. So if you're identifying there's an issue within the organization, they will look at it because they want to rectify that. And especially now, because it's so much an open conversation. Within us, from a consultancy point of view, obviously we're working on a day-to-day basis with people that run businesses from different sizes, from your big global corps all the way to SMEs. And the thing is, having a safe space to discuss things. That's the first thing I always say with them, is that whatever we discuss, it's completely safe for you to say what you really feel. I want to know what you really feel, because actually we can only affect some change and do something solid if you're honest. So you have to be able to speak freely, and everybody in the room needs to be able to speak freely. That's just one of the things that I push for when I'm engaging with any group. So whether that be senior leaders or actually further down the echelons as well, but everybody needs to have that freedom and ability to actually say how they feel, and also say if they don't understand something, because a lot of the time people fear being shot down in flames by saying, I don't understand what you're saying, or I don't understand your point of view, I don't understand why that's different for you. They have to feel confident that they can do that without us. We're not going to swing over the table and hit them or anything like that. We want to give them a good answer and help them on a journey of understanding.
And I think, Jason, that goes to, so I'm just looking at the questions. I think you're absolutely right. And I think it also goes to this question here, Fitz, around, giving this individual some advice for the Black leaders already working in the charity sector and trying to break through. If the organisation, I don't know what your organisation is like, but if there isn't even an understanding of what is even happening through that lens of, well, I don't even know how my behaviour of those microaggressions and all those other things that we are talking about, if they don't even know that, then they're not going to really see how it manifests itself in terms of how it inhibits somebody to progress, to move up, etc., etc. So I think there's a number of different things. This is quite holistic, and what I think organisations really struggle with is they often take an approach that puts out. I always say this: that it's like walking into a dark room. You put your torch on, and you're only going to address what the torch is lighting up, but everybody else is still in darkness. And then you try to fix what you can see, but you're not really addressing what you can't see. And so for me, it's about having a holistic approach that really puts the light on everything. You really need to be able to see what is going on. You need to hear it from your employees. You need to be looking at it through data. You need to be looking at it through all your different lenses of your business. And a lot of these things need to be happening in parallel, because when you start taking a view of, well, we're just going to look at recruitment, well, that's brilliant, but what about the people that are already there who are struggling to progress and move up? If you then just look at look at it just from the retention point of view, then we go, but what about how we're hiring and so you've got to really look at it, much more broadly. So I think, to answer one part of your question, I'd love the others to feed back in on this, but, it's about understanding where those barriers are in your organisation in terms of where you're getting the pushback. What is it that we're trying to break through? Why is it there in the first place? And it goes back to Nathan's point, which is around, you have to really understand and get that insight from individuals, because they will tell you. So there's no point just keeping that to ourselves. It's about really being able to articulate clearly, we've done a series of focus groups about how we look to attract, retain and engage and develop Black individuals, or insert, protected characteristic here. And what has come up is we do really well here. This is an opportunity here. This is a threat here, etc., etc. But we really need to help them to see what is the true issue, because what tends to happen is we provide solutions that never work because we never fully understand what the problem is.
Yeah, Fiona, for me, that's a really great point. For me, this is where creating a speak-up culture comes in to your organization, because unless you create that psychological safety,
correct,
for people to use those speak-up forums to share what's really going on, then you will be left behind. You have to encourage your employees to use all forums that are available to share their experience. And not many places are doing that. But what many organizations are doing is really raising the profile around well-being and mental health. I find that, again, another safe environment, to have this conversation that needs to be had and people need to talk about to see change, and rest assured, you may feel like you're the first one that's speaking up, and even if you are the first one, you will encourage many more people sharing about what I'd say in Oli language, the good, the bad, the ugly, because unless it's on the table, you can't shift things,
It's very true.
Okay. There's a question in here from Craig, which is a huge question, but I think also one that is, in a sense, underpins a lot of what we're talking about. And, he's referenced Martin Luther King's vision, I have a dream, talking about Black Panthers having a vision. And I guess is that, do you have a vision for a future society where Black lives really matter? Then what would that look like, feel like? Now, we've got about 15 minutes left, so I don't know, we don't think we can answer that question in its entirety, but I guess there is something about, if we're talking about being the change that we want to see, what is that change that we want to see? Beyond having more folks that look like us, talk like us, represented at every level, so let's say we achieve that. What then? Is anything different? Does everything just carry on as before, but with slightly different coloured faces around the table? What's different about how things work?
So for me, I'm going to keep this short because obviously we can get any more questions in the next 15 minutes. But I think what does that vision look like? The vision for me looks like, I don't want to be having this conversation. That's what it looks like to me. I don't want to be having a conversation that's still talking about this. For me, that vision is where we have much better equality. We have much better inclusion. We have our voice. We can see ourselves in the places that we are currently not in. The conversation is now mainstream. The action is now mainstream. Products and services. I don't have to go to somewhere special to find a product and service for my hair. I can actually go anywhere and get a product and service that represents me through various channels. For me, it's about a vision where, and I will use the Martin Luther King piece, which is for me about where nobody should have to be questioned about the colour of their skin, but more questioned about their character. That's what they're bringing to the table. I don't want to be in a situation where we are still having these conversations. For me, it's, I don't want to get deep and meaningful on lots of other Black theorists, but I think for me, it is very much around that equality, and that equality is not being judged by the colour of one's skin.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's
I
it.
just said here. That's
Mic
it.
drop.
I'm not saying no more.
Go home now.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
got to be, hasn't it? You know?
I don't know how you follow that one up, but echo everything
It can
Fiona
be.
said. Echo everything Fiona said. I think I would say equity is probably fair distribution of equity really is the thing that sort of stands out to me. But yeah, it will be. I mean, if we get to a place where there is good representation, throughout society at all levels of society, then that's I think that's utopia, to be fair. I think when I think about it visually in my head, it feels like it's one of the sort of inner city high streets where it is very rich, like the diversity is very rich. It doesn't, everybody just, it's like a huge big melting pot of all different ethnicities. And I think I just want to see that playing out throughout all levels of society, whereas today it just gets a little bit less diverse as you kind of go up the rankings.
Yeah, I think for me it's really simple. I just want to live in a world where we're just all counted as part of the human race, and where color doesn't dictate, your opportunities in life, whether you'll be successful, or not. It's the dream I have for my kids and their kids, to live through.
Jason, anything to add?
Not really. No, because I think everything that's been expressed is exactly what I would want, and also so that the youngsters coming up, especially because I'm always thinking and reflecting on what it's like for them, sort of in their school years, looking outwards and suddenly starting to get messages on, this is you need to start thinking about what career you should have, and what sector you want to work in. You've got your options, and then you go pick your A levels, and it then dictates what your future is. I want them to feel less stressed about those decisions and know that they can choose whatever suits them and whatever they enjoy, and know that they're going to get a fair deal going forward. That's what I want.
Yeah. I mean, I would add to that some very practical things. As a parent, I don't want to have that conversation with my son or daughter about them having to watch how their color might affect how they're dealt with in certain situations. And at one level, that's a small thing, but another level, that's a huge thing. Any of us that have sons or daughters know that we have to have that conversation at some stage. I also want the right to be mediocre and it not reflect on everybody else that looks like me.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we all know that there are plenty of mediocre people that get a long way in life, and their mediocre doesn't seem to be an impediment to their getting on. Whereas we all know if we're mediocre, we're not going anywhere. And actually, so, the right for mediocre people to be successful and that to be equalized is a strange way of putting it. But at the moment, we all know that, one person doing something, like it or not, is often taken as a reflection of everybody. And the more we move away from that, then the more I think we're starting to move towards what we've been talking about. Okay, Fiona, there is a question in here about Black Inclusion Week.
Yes.
I don't know, and I know it's a work in progress.
There's not much more to share. Depends what
you want to say about that.
There's not much more to share at this point. What I would just say is we have a number of people spread out across various sectors, Fitz being one and many others, is just to keep your eyes and ears peeled on social media as it starts to take shape. And that, we're planning that now for next year. So there's not much more I'm at liberty to share right now.
Okay.
But it's going to be good. That's what I will say.
So stay tuned to this station is the message, I think. And
yes.
I think when you signed up, I think there was a link to the Black Leaders site. So bookmark that and then pay some regular visits there, because that's how I think where a lot of the updates will be communicated, as well as joining in on LinkedIn and on Facebook and so on as well. So all of those usual channels. I just wanted to check, because I can go through continue to go through the chat. I just wonder if there's anybody that wanted to come onto camera
Ooh.
and onto mic and either make an observation or ask a question of our
I hope
panelists.
so. Come on, let's see.
Yes. You'll be alive at the end of the
We
process.
don't
I can
bite.
guarantee you that. Okay, Monica. Monica, you've got your hand up. Come on down, as they used to say on a game show.
The Price is Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason, I was trying to keep quiet. People are like, what, The Price is Right? What's that?
Ask your mum or dad, unless you're
Yeah.
my age, in which case
We
I
all
know.
watched
So
it. We all watched it.
Do we have some? I can see there's a hand up at the bottom.
yeah, Monica, I
Monica.
can see your hand up. Did you want to come on to mic or camera?
Oh, mute button is
Yes.
playing.
Here we go.
There we go. Yeah, it's off. So I was clicking away. Can you
Okay,
hear
Monica,
me?
how you doing?
Yes, hello.
Yes, I'm doing really well. Good evening, everyone. This has been absolutely amazing and very timely. So I have a bit of a dilemma. So it's a question to the panel. So as I said, we're relaunching our BAME network in my organisation. I'm part of a local authority. I was spoken to today, so I've now become this figure within the local authority. People that didn't know me before now know me. I am the person to come to with any issue if you are black, and that they are. So essentially today I was presented with some information that basically told me that our executive sponsor, and this is the reason why I'm not totally sold by it all, is of an opinion that doesn't necessarily support the agenda. So my question is, how do you circumnavigate, I should say, individuals that claim to be in support that are not?
Wow, good question, Monica. Now you want a good answer. I'll hold back a little bit. I'll let some of the others go forth.
I guess do you have a view on who you actually need to influence, or who you need to be on that bus with you, I guess.
Well, the issue is, and it's a very, very big issue, that the person that is our executive sponsor holds a deputy executive position, and also heads up our law and governance, so has direct influence over policy.
Can I ask a question? And I know you've asked us a question, but I just need to delve a little bit more to find out without revealing too much, because I'm conscious that these are recorded. So has this person been nominated to be a sponsor, or do they want to be a sponsor?
We have been told that they want to be a sponsor.
Okay, clearly for me there's a couple of issues, because I think without knowing the full context, and I'm not going to take a position of judgment, immediately, but there could be a number of issues, because what tends to happen in these cases is that sometimes we use the word sponsor, but actually a lot of individuals don't even know what that actually entails. What does that actually mean? What does that mean for me? What do you want me to do? What does that look like? So I think Nathan's question around, about that expectation is really quite important. I think the other piece then for me around that engagement is to have that engagement, has there been a conversation as well with this individual around that expectation? What do they want? How do they see it? But also, if it's something that they're wanting to do, I'd actually be questioning them. Really, is it what you want to do? Because if it is what you're wanting to do, the outputs and the outcomes behaviours that you are demonstrating aren't actually matching what, and that's why I think it's important for them to know what the role of the sponsor is. That really needs to be clear, I think, as one of the first places to go to, because like I said, that can be a stumbling block, particularly in areas where they may want to be, but we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but they may want to be, but if it's an area that they're uncomfortable with, and they are then going to themselves, well, this isn't my area of expertise, so I'm going to hold back and let these individuals whose area of expertise it is do the doing, let them do it. So I do think there's a bit of a step back and really getting that understanding around what they perceive their role to be and what it should be, if that helps as a starter,
Monica,
as a beginning
I will
point.
add, sorry, Fiona. Monica, I will add on, you know, you've got a blank page at the moment with someone who's very new, you know, and one of the things I've learned over the years with some executive sponsor is that as much as they may put their hand up, it becomes a really daunting reality of what's required for them to do. So the first thing I will do if I was in your position is give him benefit of the doubt and sit down with him,
Yeah,
you know, and
engage.
just understand what he's looking to get out of the sponsorship role. I always ask this question, you know, with any forum, especially if it's someone like a sponsor around, what will success look like, you know, in their eyes, you know, unless you can start getting into that level of conversation, you know, you will find that you will not be able to get into the heart and mind of what this individual is really looking to achieve as a sponsor. So take the opportunity that you've got the blank page, you know, and shape alongside this individual, because my experience of network is it takes a long time, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of efforts, etc. And I'm sure Nathan will agree with me with where they've got to with Auto Trader. So I want to encourage you to just pursue it and give the person, you know, benefit of the doubt, sit down with them and just seek to understand of why they really want this role and what will success look like for them. Then you can build it bottom up.
Thank you.
Oh, I can see food for thought. I can feel your brain.
It does it, and I think what you said, Fiona, is important. You know, it's a live situation, so I think we do need to be conscious of how much depth we can go into. But this is political, both big people, because it's a local authority. It's big P political and small P political, which is something that's quite distinctive within the kind of a local authority context as well. But you know, it's all about interests and payoffs and what's in it for me and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes what's said isn't what's really going on. So I think what Ollie's just said is really important to kind of really start to tease that out. And that's not something you can force.
Yeah. Sorry to jump in there, Fitzroy. Monica, here's an offer for you. If you're interested to talk one-on-one, I'll pass on my contact details via Fitzroy.
Okay.
If that helps.
Absolutely amazing, because you know, I think more detail around this would be useful.
Yeah.
And on that, I'll share something with you, Ollie, that you can share with Monica as well, in terms of 3 good kind of questions that more for your back pocket, but to help with that conversation around the intention to be a sponsor. And you know, so it kind of crosses over into allyship in terms of, you know, why am I doing this? Am I doing it, you know, for different reasons? So I'll share that with Ollie, and then she can pass that on to you as well, Monica, if that helps.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Okay. On my clock, we have about 2 minutes left. There is never enough time for conversations like these. I think it's been absolutely brilliant. I just wanted to kind of draw things to a conclusion. I won't say a close because these conversations will continue, but I just want to ask each of the panelists for, if you like, a thought that you would want to leave with our guests arising out of everything that we've spoken about today.
I don't mind kicking off. So I would just say, I've got plenty to say, as you all know, but I think for everybody today, so far with what you've listened to and taken on board, is I would say do not be afraid to be the catalyst of change yourself. That's what I would say.
I'll do a quick short follow-up to that because it's probably similar sort of vein. I guess we're all unique in our positions and our views of the world. Our perspective is very different. Like even in, you might have 2 black people in the same organization, just in slightly different teams, so your perspectives are still going to be somewhat different. And I think you need to, whenever you're thinking, oh, do I need to raise this? Do I need to be that voice of change? Do I need to be that catalyst? I would ask yourself this: if not you, then who? And I think that's kind of the thing that really drives me a lot of the time when I feel like, you know, I can't be bothered anymore. It's just like, if not you, then who? And that'll probably be my little nugget for the day.
Okay. And if not now, then when? might be the other piece that goes with it as well.
That's the other one.
Yeah, I didn't invent that one. That's a civil rights thing as well. But yeah, that's a good one.
I was going to say for the obviously there are some young people, young professionals who are also part of this, and I think that for them, I'd like to say just to be aware of all the networks that are out there to support you, and make sure that you use them to get access to the right people to support you on whatever endeavor it is that you're looking to do for yourselves. Use the people that are putting themselves out there to support you and to give you the strength, the advice, the collaboration to get to whatever what endpoint you're looking to get to. Do not be discouraged by anything that's going on, and also use every opportunity that comes your way to upskill yourself. So if you're given the opportunity to gain qualifications or to gain some sort of professional membership or anything like that, always take it, because they're really useful for later on.
Yeah, and for me, I'll go back to what I mentioned earlier, which is don't forget you're bringing a lot to the table for any organization. The organizations need you as much as you need them. Take a risk on yourself and don't allow to be silenced, because you have to be your own champion more so than anyone.
Okay, some great words, I think, to leave with everybody and to bring our conversation to a close. So once again, I just want to, this has been a fantastic session. So to Nathan, Jason, Ollie, Fiona, thank you so much for being as generous as you've been this evening with your time and your insight and your energy. I think that you can see by the comments in the chat that people are really getting so much from everything that you've contributed. So I think we should do the virtual round of applause at this time. Don't know how it comes across, but let's do that anyway.
Thank you, everyone.
So that pretty much draws things to a close. So once again, thanks to everybody that's been part of it this evening. Thanks for your contributions and making this event what it is. I've had a great time. I think everyone here has had a great time. Don't forget, there's more going on this week for Black History Month, events happening tomorrow and Thursday and Friday as well. Check out the corporate website and see what it is that's going on. But thanks for your company this evening, and thanks for your contributions. I would say have a safe journey home, but you're probably already at home, so that's okay.
Safe journey downstairs.
Yeah, but be good and stay safe. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.